Ma'am, with all due respect, this isn't a regional hop to Cleveland. This is a high-G escort mission. Maybe you'd be more comfortable in the simulator." The words, slick with condescension, echoed in the sterile hush of the Langley briefing room. The crowd of younger pilots, a sea of olive-drab flight suits and youthful confidence, chuckled. It was a nervous, deferential laughter, the kind that aligns itself with perceived power. The speaker, Lieutenant Commander Viper Jensen, leaned back in his chair, a smirk playing on his lips. He was the squadron's golden boy, the hotshot with the perfect record and the swagger to match. His target was the woman in the back row. She appeared to be in her late 40s, her hair showing faint traces of silver at the temples, her face etched with lines that spoke of long hours under a desert sun, not the smooth, unblemished features of the pilots fresh from training. She offered zero reaction. Her eyes, a calm and steady gray, did not flicker towards him. Her hands, resting on the flight plan in her lap, did not tense. She simply made a small, precise notation with a standard-issue pen, the movement economical and utterly devoid of emotion. Her silence was a vacuum in the room, drawing all the nervous energy into itself. But in the corner, observing the entire exchange, General Marcus Thorne, the base commander, saw something else. He didn't see an aging officer out of her depth. He saw the way she held that pen, not like a writer, but like a surgeon holding a scalpel. He saw her posture, perfectly relaxed but poised, a posture of immense, coiled potential. And he saw the single, unremarkable pin on her collar, a small, dark metal shape that no one else recognized. It was a ghost from a past he thought long buried. If you believe respect is earned in silence, not shouted from a soapbox, type competence below. The mission was a pressure cooker, a high-stakes dress rehearsal for a real-world VIP transport codenamed Noble Arrow. The asset was a modified E-4B Nightwatch, serving as a stand-in for Air Force One, and the escort package was a complex web of F-22 Raptors flying top cover. The air crackled with the kind of tension that only precedes missions where failure is not an option. Viper Jensen, leading the primary escort element, filled the comms channel with confident chatter, his voice a smooth baritone of command. The woman, Major Evelyn Reed, was assigned to the outer screening element, callsign Ghost. Her presence was a source of continued grumbling among the younger pilots. She was a transfer from a records annex at the Pentagon. They'd heard, a desk jockey getting her flight hours in before retirement. Her flight suit was bare, stripped of the colorful squadron patches that pilots wore like badges of honor. It was an emblem of her anonymity, a blank slate onto which they projected their own assumptions. Her silence on the radio was, to them, further proof of her inadequacy. While they called out visual confirmations and joked about the G-forces, her transmissions were clipped, technical, and sparse. Ghost, on station, Ghost, Roger, Ghost, contact bearing 270, no factor. Each word was a stone dropped into a pond, efficient and without ripple. They flew east over the Atlantic, a diamond formation of lethal predators guarding their precious charge. The sun glinted off their canopies, the world a serene tapestry of blue sky and endless ocean. It was a perfect day for flying. It was a perfect day for something to go terribly wrong. The crisis began not with a missile warning or an enemy fighter, but with a choked gasp over the encrypted channel. Mayday, mayday, mayday. Striker 3. Oh God, I have a complete engine and hydraulics failure. The voice belonged to a young lieutenant, his first high-stakes mission. A catastrophic turbine blade separation had shredded his F-22's primary systems. Alarms blared in his cockpit, a symphony of electronic panic. His aircraft, one of the most advanced fighters ever built, began to wobble, then entered a terrifying, unrecoverable flat spin. On the ground, in the command center, the tactical plot showed Striker 3's icon turning into a sickening spiral, losing altitude at a catastrophic rate over a heavily populated shipping lane. The comms channel exploded into chaos. Striker 3, eject. Punch out. Someone get a fix on his position. Viper's voice, usually so smooth, was tight with strain. Kid, get out of the damn plane. But the young pilot was frozen, paralyzed by the violent G-forces and the sheer terror of his multi-million-dollar coffin plummeting towards the sea. Then, a new voice cut through the noise. It was utterly calm, as steady as a surgeon's hand. All stations, this is Ghost. Cease transmissions. The authority in her tone was absolute, and a sudden, shocked silence fell over the channel. Viper, you will maintain escort formation on Noble Arrow. Do not deviate. Striker 3, this is Ghost. Talk to me. Her voice was not comforting. It was diagnostic, an engineer assessing a broken machine. She was not there to soothe his fear. She was there to solve the problem. The young pilot, his voice a ragged whisper, stammered, I can't control it. It's in a flat spin, ma'am. The manual says it's unrecoverable. Her reply was instantaneous, devoid of any doubt. The manual is wrong. Now listen to me. Your life depends on you following my instructions precisely. Do you understand? A shaky, yes, ma'am, was the reply. What followed was a masterclass in aeronautical genius that defied every known procedure. Striker 3, you will ignore your spin alarm. On my mark, you will jettison your portside stores only. Mark, there was a distant thud as the pilot complied. Good. Now, you will retract your flaps to half. The controls will fight you. Force them, the young pilot grunted with effort. Now for the hard part. Ghost's voice remained unervingly level. I need you to induce a negative G push. You are going to push the stick forward. It will feel wrong. It will feel like you are accelerating the spin. Trust me. On my mark. Mark, the command center watched in horrified awe as the spinning icon on their screens did something unthinkable. It momentarily tightened its rotation before the nose suddenly pitched down, breaking the aerodynamic lock of the flat spin. The fighter was now in a steep, uncontrolled dive, but it was no longer spinning. You are in a controlled dive, Striker, Ghost stated calmly. You are now flying a very expensive glider. There is a civilian airstrip at these coordinates. I will talk you down for the next 10 minutes. She did just that, calling out airspeed, glide slope, and rudder inputs within human precision. She was flying his jet for him, her mind a supercomputer processing thousands of variables. The final moments were breathtaking. She guided the deadstick F-22, a machine never designed to land without power, onto a short runway meant for propeller planes. The sound of screaming tires filled the comms, followed by a long, shuddering scrape of metal. Then, silence. A profound, deafening silence. It was broken, a full 30 seconds later, by the young pilot's breathless voice. Oh my God. I'm down. I'm on the ground. I'm safe. In the air, Viper was a ghost himself, his cockpit silent, his arrogance vaporized at 40,000 feet. In the command center, an engineer whispered the words everyone was thinking. That's not possible. Back at Langley, General Thorne stood ramrod straight, his eyes fixed on the main tactical display, where a small icon now blinked green from a runway in Nova Scotia. He had seen flying like that only once before, a lifetime ago, in a place that didn't officially exist on any map. The call sign, Ghost, was not a coincidence. It was a key. He turned to his aide, his voice low but carrying the unmistakable weight of command. Get me Major Reed's file. Not the standard service record. The sealed one. The one that requires Omega-level clearance. The aide, a young captain, paled. Omega clearance was reserved for the highest echelons of national security, for secrets that could shift the global balance of power. He fumbled with his console, his fingers suddenly clumsy. A few moments later, a file appeared on the general's private screen, its contents almost entirely obscured by thick black lines of redaction. Thorne leaned in, his knuckles resting on the desk, and entered his personal override code. The black lines dissolved, revealing the text beneath. It was like watching a ghost materialize from thin air. The room was silent as Thorne read, his expression shifting from grim recognition to profound, almost reverent awe. He then ordered the file projected onto the main screen for the entire command staff to see, a move that broke a dozen security protocols but was, in this moment, absolutely necessary. The information scrolled upwards, each line a hammer blow to the assumptions that had filled the briefing room only hours before. Name, Evelyn Reed. Call sign, Ghost. The first line was simple enough, but what followed silenced the room completely. Unit classification, redacted, 412th Test Wing, Skunk Works Division, the legendary, semi-mythical home of America's most secret aircraft. Flight hours, 8,214. Combat sorties, 457-inch. The numbers were astronomical, more than double that of any other pilot in the squadron. Primary airframe experience: F-117 Nighthawk, F-22 Raptor, YF-23 Black Widow 2, Chief Test Pilot. She hadn't just flown the Raptor. She had been one of the pilots who had pushed its prototype to the breaking point, who had defined its limits. The next section was even more stunning. Special qualifications: lead developer, unrecoverable flat spin recovery procedure, F-22 program. Recipient of the Distinguished Flying Cross with Valor, 3. Air Force Cross, 1. The final entry, however, was the one that made the blood run cold. It was a single line of text next to a stark, ominous symbol of a Greek helmet. Designation: Athena Protocol. Emergency Command Authority, Noble Aero Escort Package. When the pilots returned, the ground crew met them with an unnerving, respectful silence. As Major Reed descended the ladder of her jet, General Thorne was there on the tarmac, waiting. He didn't offer a handshake or a casual word. As she took her final step onto the concrete, the four-star general snapped to the sharpest, most formal position of attention she had ever seen and rendered a perfect salute. "Ma'am," his voice boomed across the flight line, a crack of thunder in the quiet afternoon. "On behalf of a grateful Air Force, thank you." The sight of a full general saluting a major sent a wave of shock through every person on that flight line. Thorne then dropped his salute and turned his icy gaze on Viper and the other pilots, who stood frozen in a state of mortified disbelief. "Lieutenant Commander Jensen." Thorne's voice was quiet now, but more lethal than any shout. "Earlier today, you questioned Major Reed's qualifications. Let me be perfectly clear. You are not qualified to clean Major Reed's canopy. The recovery procedure she just used to save the life of your wingman? She wrote it. She wrote it after being the only pilot to ever successfully execute it in a real-world engine failure over hostile territory 30 years ago. Her call sign isn't a cute nickname. She is Ghost because she was the lead test pilot for the YF-23, a program that, for all intents and purposes, officially never existed. And the Athena Protocol? That means in the event of a catastrophic command failure during a presidential-level escort, her authority immediately and absolutely supersedes everyone's. Including mine. He let that sink in. You didn't just disrespect a senior officer today, son. You disrespected a living legend. The story of the incident spread not like wildfire, but like a shockwave. It didn't travel through gossip. It was transmitted through official channels, through hushed, reverent tones in secure video conferences and encrypted messages. The recording of the comms channel during the crisis became the most sought-after training material in the Air Force. At the academy in Colorado Springs, instructors would play the audio for their cadets. "Listen," they'd say, pausing the recording on the dead air after she took command. "That's not silence. That is the sound of absolute control. That is the sound of competence. The legend of Ghost Reed was born, not in a blaze of glory, but in the quiet, methodical saving of a single life." The day after the mission, Viper Jensen found her in a cavernous maintenance hangar. She wasn't in the officers' club or in a debriefing room. She was on her back on a creeper, halfway under the fuselage of her jet, a wrench in her hand, personally inspecting the hydraulic lines. He stood there for a full minute, his own reflection staring back at him from the polished hangar floor, the arrogant pilot from yesterday, now just a humbled man. He cleared his throat. "Ma'am." "Major Reed." She didn't respond immediately. He heard the distinct click of a torque wrench reaching its setting, then the soft whir of wheels as she slid out from under the aircraft. She sat up, wiping grease from her hands with a clean rag, and finally looked at him. Her gray eyes held no triumph, no hint of "I told you so." They were simply observant. There's no excuse, ma'am," he stammered, his parade ground voice gone. "My conduct was unprofessional. I was arrogant, and I was wrong. Thank you for saving Lieutenant Wallace. And for the lesson." Evelyn Reed finished wiping her hands, folded the rag neatly, and placed it on her toolbox. Her gaze never left his. It wasn't accusatory, it was evaluative, as if she were assessing a piece of faulty equipment. "It's a dangerous job, Lieutenant Commander," she said, her voice as level and steady as it had been at 40,000 feet. "Assumptions are the deadliest thing in the sky. Deadlier than surface-to-air missiles, deadlier than engine failure, deadlier than enemy fighters. You check your gear, you check your fuel, you check your weapons. But you forgot to check your assumptions. She stood up, her movements fluid and efficient. Check those first. Every time. With that, she turned back to her jet, picking up her checklist. The conversation, for her, concluded. The lesson had been given, and it was over. For Viper, it was just beginning. His formal reprimand was a footnote. His real penance was the memory of her calm voice and his own panicked shouting. He had been weighed, measured, and found wanting. A few weeks later, Lieutenant Wallace, the pilot she had saved, returned to flight status. The nose of his brand-new F-22 now bore a small, subtle piece of art just below the cockpit, a simple, gray silhouette of a ghost. And on the coast of Nova Scotia, the small civilian airstrip where he had made his impossible landing had a new, unofficial name for its single runway, a name that the local pilots and controllers adopted with pride: Ghost Landing. The legend was cementing itself not in statues, but in the small, meaningful tributes of the people who understood the truth of what had happened. 6 months later, the briefing room at Langley was filled with a new class of pilots, their faces a mixture of eagerness and apprehension. The atmosphere was different. The casual arrogance, the chest-thumping bravado, was gone. It had been replaced by a quiet, focused intensity. At the front of the room stood their instructor, Lieutenant Commander Viper Jensen. He was a changed man. The easy smirk was gone, replaced by a stern, watchful expression. He was harder on his students than any instructor before him, but he was also fairer, and he had zero tolerance for ego. Before starting his briefing, he pointed to an empty chair in the back row, right where she had Saturday. "Look at that chair," he commanded, his voice sharp. "That is the most important seat in this room. We call it the ghost seat. We leave it empty to remind us of something vital. It's there to remind us that the most skilled, most dangerous person in any room is often the one you notice the least. It's there to remind us that true competence doesn't need to advertise. It doesn't need flashy patches or a loud voice. It simply is." The story of Major Reed had become more than just a story. It had become a parable, a foundational piece of the squadron's culture, a permanent corrective against the sin of pride. She had, without ever intending to, changed them all. True strength is never found in the volume of your voice, but in the quiet depth of your skill. It is not measured by the number of medals pinned to a chest in a display case, but by the lives you protect and the standards you quietly, relentlessly uphold. Legacy isn't a monument you carve for yourself out of stone and ego. It is the solid foundation you lay for others to build upon, long after your name is forgotten. Major Evelyn Reed never sought recognition. She never wanted a story told about her. All she ever did was her duty, with a level of precision and a depth of dedication that could bend the laws of physics, humble the proud, and remind an entire generation of warriors what professionalism truly meant. Her silence was her shield and her calm was her armor, but her competence was her sword. And in a world filled with the deafening noise of self-promotion and arrogance, her quiet example echoed louder and longer than any sonic boom, a lasting testament to the enduring truth that true respect is never demanded. It is commanded by action, earned in silence, and given in awe. For more stories where quiet competence triumphs over loud arrogance, and where silent strength defines true worth, subscribe to Unknown Heroine Stories.